Woohoo, the wife and producer is gone. She is handling graduation business with our eldest. And you know what they say, when the cat's away, the mice shall play. So I'm eating a bowl of cereal. And like a true villain and monster, I have mixed cornflakes with Fruit Loops. Now let me explain. The cornflakes are so plain that I need something to kind of give it a little sugar, a little kick, a little oomph. And so I figured Fruit Loops. That was not a good idea. Um, but yeah, you live and you learn. There's nothing wrong with that. Uh-oh. And music is starting, which means I have to get started. Anyway, hello everybody. Welcome back to Dadgum What the FRAP podcast. I'm your host, J-ZILLA. I'm without my beautiful, wonderful producer slash wife tonight because she's handling some graduation business, as I said. But I have two wonderful guests. They hail from the University of New Mexico, one Joseph, one Trey. And we're going to talk a little bit about Mental Health Awareness Month, which is this month, and some possible resources for you students out there. So stick around to the What the FRAP podcast. Again, I'm your host, J-ZILLA, and it starts in 3, 2, like and
This morning, a violent weather outbreak bringing tornadoes to Florida's Atlantic coast.
Now to that urgent and massive manhunt after that deadly mass shooting near Houston. The youngest victim, just 8 years old. Police say the suspect. International High School of New Orleans is making quite an impression on the college admission.
Dennis Barnes has gone into 125 colleges and universities. He's also earned millions in scholarships. As for how he did it, well, the teen is very humble and credits hard work and those around.
All right. The What the FRAP podcast has begun. I'm going to have you all introduce yourselves one at a time. We'll start with Mr. Trey Holland.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Trey Holland. I am the Mental Health Training and Development Specialist at the Student Health and Counseling Building at UNM. So what that means is I like to consider myself mental health's #1 fan on campus. So I work with the counselors and with the health promotion department, which is all of our wellness outreach, to talk about mental health with students, ways that they can take care of their mental health, and then also the resources that they have available to them on campus. So thank you very much for having me.
Man, thank you very much for being here. I know that, listen, this could be weird because the lights can get real bright, but it's nice because I think once we get into it, it's just a conversation that we'll have. So that's pretty good there. Okay, Joseph, the young, fresh face right there, man. Talk to us.
Perfect. So my name is Joseph Barros. I'm a student here at the University of New Mexico. I'm a nursing major, and I am a student employee for student health and counseling here at UNM. And I'm just really excited to be here today to help participate in this discussion.
I love it, man. I know it can't be easy. Now, they say that kids are kind of, and I'm using that term very liberally, okay? They say that kids are pretty, I don't know, closed off, and they're all introverted and glued to their phones, right? Do you find that to be true? Anybody?
I mean, I think personally, I would say that that's probably a misconception. While I definitely think cell phone usage has gone up since like past generations, I don't necessarily think that that's a fair generalization to make about every young individual. So I don't necessarily think that that's true. I think a lot of times people from older generations, they kind of misconstrue these ideas about younger people without actually fully trying to understand us, if that makes sense.
Right. What about you? What do you see in your day-to-day? Or do you have a lot of dealings with students, Mr. Holland?
Oh, yeah, I work directly with the students. And what I will say is I think it's just different, is what I would say. This is really the first generation to have grown up with cell phones in their hands. And there is a lot of social interaction that occurs for our students through social media and through cell phones. So I think that social interaction looks a little bit different. I do think that sort of growing up with social media and growing up with the internet and conversating through that has kind of changed the way that students might behave in in-person settings, and maybe they're not as used to interacting in person. But closed off, I don't necessarily feel that. I would say that a lot of students are very, very open about the way that they think and the way that they feel.
Right, that's pretty cool. So I have let's see, my boys are 4 and 6 years old. My girls are 14 and 18. I have one graduating La Cueva High School, and she'll be at UNM. What do y'all do for the new students? Like, how do you get them involved as soon as possible and let them know all the many, many resources that are there?
Well, the biggest thing that we do, and I think Joseph can attest to this, is whenever a student starts at UNM, they go through a big, rigorous orientation process. This is where they're sat in a room and people go up and talk to them about all the different resources that they have available to them on campus. They're taken on a tour on campus and pointed out all the different resources. And health promotion, my department is actually involved in that as well. We talk with them about the services that student health and counseling provides, events that we have coming up, events that they can take part in. So we really want to make sure that students are familiar and comfortable with the university environment. However, that can be, especially for a new student, maybe out of the house for the first time, that can be a bit overwhelming.
Right. Right. And so for you, Joseph, you find that to be pretty good. Like, do you ever feel like you're overwhelmed? Like, what? First of all, okay, I'm all over the place. This is what happens when I don't have my producer here. Okay, forgive me. So, what is your class right now?
My class, like my graduate class.
Well, I guess your grade. What do y'all call it? Yeah.
So I just finished my freshman year, so I will be a sophomore this upcoming fall.
Okay, and so for orientation, how did you find it? Like, do you feel like it was so much information? Like, how can I grasp onto any one thing, or was it?
I will say it is a lot of information at one time, but I think they're really good at honing in on what are the most important resources that you're going to need to know, and what is kind of just like the things that you're going to be exposed to all the time. So while it is a lot of information at one time, I do think that they're pretty good at being like, hey, like, yes, you have all of these different resources and here's all this information, but here are the ones that you're really going to need to know.
Oh, sorry, muted. All right. So what are the ones that you really that you got to take advantage of?
Well, obviously student health and counseling, that's a big one for most students, especially if you're going to be living on campus. It's going to be a very big resource for you to utilize. We have lots of health services, and as most of us know, your health is what keeps you going. But other than that, it's just, there's a lot of different other things. There's things with like ASUNM, which is like the student government. There's all these different activities through the different groups we have, like El Centro de la Raza. We have the AISS, the American Indian Student Association. And so that those different groups, they have lots of different resources at your disposal. And so those are the ones I think that are kind of big for people to know about.
Nice. What do you have to say, Mr. Holland, for a student who, like for me, I came from a background of like, Uncle so-and-so was just, he's crazy. And you just kind of like shrug your shoulders and move on. Like for people who have a background like me, who didn't really know a lot about mental health at all, right? Even though I was going through some episodes myself, like how do you get them feeling comfortable enough to even know that they need to seek help?
Yeah, and this is actually a subject that I'm particularly passionate about, because whenever I talk to students, I'm talking to them from the perspective of somebody who is a college dropout. I dropped out of college because at the time, whenever I was going to school, I was dealing with a lot of mental and emotional stuff that I didn't quite understand, didn't have words for. All I knew is that I felt overwhelmed and that I wasn't sleeping. And I kind of grew up in a very rural area where mental health was not something that was discussed. It was maybe mentioned, but it was more along the lines of, oh, this person's crazy, much like you said. So it was after I started working in mental health, I've been in mental health for about 5 years, where I really started to grasp mental health and just how pervasive it is and how much it impacts your everyday life. And so one of the things that we like to talk about with students is that it is perfectly normal and it is perfectly okay. You go to the doctor whenever you're feeling sick. You go to the counselor whenever you need emotional support or mental health help, and it's perfectly fine. Mental health is something that everybody deals with. Your mental health is just a part of your life. It can be good, it can be bad, but we really, really encourage that people take an active interest in their mental health, and that they seek help whenever they feel like they need it, that it's perfectly okay, and that there is nothing wrong with it, and that their mental health doesn't really define them. So for example, say you go to counseling and you're diagnosed with depression. You are not depression, right? Depression does not define you. Depression is something you have. In the same way, whereas if you went to the doctor and the doctor said, hey, you have diabetes, you are not diabetes, right? You just have diabetes. That doesn't mean that you're going to be unhealthy for your entire life. That's just something that you need to keep in mind and kind of monitor and take care of in order to be physically healthy. So somebody with depression, they're not depression. They just have depression. They just have this thing that they need to look out and kind of nurture and take care of in order to be mentally healthy.
Man, that's huge. I see Joseph look like he's chomping at the bits up there, right? Now, we've used the term mental health a few times here. I want to start with the young fella, right? I want to know, what does mental health mean to you?
Well, I think mental health means a lot of things to me, especially as a student. Mental health is extremely important because your mental health not only affects, obviously, how you're feeling, how you're thinking, but how you're physically feeling, how you learn, your education style. There's so many things that your mental health affects. So for me, mental health is kind of just like encompass of everything that has to do with your health. If you can take care of your brain, then your brain can help take care of everything else. So that's kind of how I view it.
I think you nailed it off the park, right? So more specifically, okay, is it true that basically we all have our mental health issues, and we're in this fluid state between, I'm not gonna say manic, but happy, about midway, very, very deeply sad, which is another way of saying depressed, right? So how do we define what type of mental health issue we're having, and where do I need to start as far as getting help treating that mental health issue? I'll give that one to Mr. Holland. We'll give him the hard ones, all right, Joseph?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so what I do want to say, I want to normalize having emotions and having feelings, right? So there is a big difference between feeling sad or feeling anxious. Those are perfectly normal emotions that human beings have felt for as long as human beings have existed, and being or having diagnosed clinical depression or diagnosed clinical anxiety. So what I would really want to say about that is a diagnosis is something that can only be done in a counseling setting with a counselor. And so how do you really know the difference between feeling sad and feeling depressed, right? Well, everybody feels sad sometimes. But depression, if you are feeling so sad that for weeks on end, you're not motivated to do the things that you need to do or to relate to others. And I think something that students kind of struggle with at least now, is they think that they might be depressed because, especially now, this generation has a lot more comfort and a lot more literacy in talking about mental health than I think any generation prior to it. But I think a kind of problem that can come with that is students can have a tendency to self-diagnose themselves. And so they will feel sad for a couple of days, and they'll go onto the internet and they'll go, I think I have depression, and they might take a couple of online quizzes, a couple of online surveys, and they will become convinced, absolutely convinced, by the end of that hour that they have severe depression or whatever it might be. The issue with that, I attribute it, or I liken it to going on WebMD if you have a shoulder pain, right? So if you go on WebMD and you're like, my shoulder hurts, by the end of that session, you are going to be absolutely convinced that you're dying. No matter what it is, you are absolutely convinced that you're dying. And a lot of times students can go to a counseling session already convinced that they have this diagnosis. And they can tell the counselor that I have depression. I want you to tell me that I have depression. Well, a diagnostic, like I said, mental illness does not define you. You are not your mental illness. A diagnosis is really just something that the professionals use in order to determine a course of treatment, right? Do you need exposure therapy? Do you need medication? It's just a way for them to determine your course of treatment. They're not attributing a personality to you. So I think a lot of students go into counseling in mind thinking, oh, I have this, I have that. But the diagnostic, the DSM-5, which is that big book of mental illnesses that clinicians use, is a huge book full of mental disorders, and they all have symptoms that are very similar to each other. And sort of the problem that can come with self-diagnosing, you might be depressed. It's true, you might be depressed, but you could also just be feeling burnout or stress or extreme symptoms of anxiety, or say, for example, it could be something physical like a brain tumor. A brain tumor can impact the way that you think. And if you've diagnosed yourself and you don't feel the need to go talk to a mental or a medical professional, that might get missed. So if you feel, I do want to normalize having emotions. If you feel anxious every now and then, or you feel sad, nobody's going to feel happy all the time. That's just an unrealistic standard. It's perfectly okay to feel sad, especially for new incoming students who go into college and they go, this is supposed to be the greatest time of my life, figuring out who I am, all this freedom. Why do I feel sad? Well, you're just in an adjustment period. You're kind of redefining your relationships, and the brain is not really happy about change. It loves its routine, and that's perfectly fine. But if you get to a point where you're not functioning, I would strongly recommend that at that point, or even if you want to be proactive a little bit before, scheduling an appointment with a counselor, that's perfectly fine.
That's incredible. I love how it's not like I don't want to say death sentence, but it's not a permanent thing. So I know when I got diagnosed as bipolar 2, and we tried several types of medications. Then we found a cocktail, as they call it, that actually works or seems to be working. But one of the most comforting things was, getting to a point with my therapist where it was like, hey, we've met every week, twice a week. Now let's do once a week. And then once a week turn into every other week. And then let's meet every third week to a month to like, all right, you're in a good place. If you feel yourself slipping back, feel free to call. If it's an emergency, feel free to call. So that comfort that like, oh, I can treat this thing and go on and live a fairly normal life, whatever normal means, right? That was comforting. It's like, okay, I don't have to deal with this for the rest of my life. I have to be careful and watch myself, engage my emotions and where they fall on that chart. But yeah, that's really incredible. And I like the idea of like me driving down the road and hearing a big clank and hearing the car and going, I'm sure it's blah, blah, blah. Just keep driving on, right? Like, no, you're going to absolutely take that into a mechanic shop, right? So Joseph, you being the ears on the ground there, right? You're mingling in with the kids while you're taking classes and stuff. What are some things that I guess working with, I'm sorry, you work with Trey, correct?
I do. Yes, I do.
Yeah. So now working with Trey, are you able to kind of look at and see some symptoms from some of your friends or even your family members and say, hey man, think about going to Shack or going and seeking counseling?
Well, totally. And well, it may not be necessarily like, oh, I think you're showing signs of whatever, right? I think it's definitely something where um I'm more comfortable now looking at my friends, my family, and being like, hey, it's okay to have these emotions. Whatever you're feeling, go ahead and feel those. So I think working at Shack has just really allowed me to be able to take a step back and realize that it's not necessarily healthy to bottle up all your feelings inside, especially as a student, and all of my student friends. It's not going to be healthy for us to just keep pushing, 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 because if we are neglecting our mental health, everything else is just kind of gonna not do that great. So I definitely think that working with Trey, working at Shack has really helped me to be able to normalize having feelings and feeling feelings.
See, that's amazing. Now, how do you get other kids? I keep saying kids, man, but you're a full grown adult. All right. So I want to give you your due because my daughter is constantly staying on me. It's like, who's a kid? I don't know what you're talking about. I can buy cigarettes. Like, wait, hold on. Please don't go buy cigarettes. But yeah, so how do I don't know, we adults kind of get out the way and give you all a real voice to voice what you feel, without you feeling intimidated, whatever is left over from high school, you have your teacher, your principal, counselor, all these people sort of lording over you, right? In positions of authority. And then all of a sudden 1 year, 1 year goes by, then all of a sudden you're solely responsible for so many things all at once, including your social interactions. So how do you strengthen or strengthen the youth in order to like allow them to be emboldened enough to take care of these things on their own and kind of, get adults to back off a little bit and trust you a little bit more?
Well, I mean, that's definitely not an easy task because not everyone wants to talk about their feelings, especially people around my age. But I would say that just talking to them like you're a friend, just make them feel comfortable. Um, you know, it's just about being kind. I mean, that's the only way to really get people to open up. And like you mentioned, it's a very large transition going from a high school setting to then having all this autonomy and freedom. And you kind of get shoved out into the world, and they're like, deal with it. So it's a very hard transition to make. But I definitely think the best way to make sure that people who are going through that transition, that you're just checking in on them and making sure, like, how do you feel? Would you like to voice some of your concerns to me? I'm here for you is a big thing.
So showing a lot of support.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's huge. And so what are some of the tactics, Mr. Holland, that you use in order to, like, I don't know, get the youth to trust that they're in the right place, right? They're in a safe space to be able to really get a fair chance to heal?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. Really, mental health has this huge stigma associated with it. As I said before, this generation now is probably the most comfortable with talking about mental health, but it is still a very stigmatized topic. I think there are a lot of people that feel like if they go and ask for help with stress or anxiety, that they are admitting to some sort of weakness or some sort of flaw about themselves. And you have to kind of be aware of that stigma. And it kind of impacts the way that you word things. You have to watch the way that you word certain terms. So, for example, I've been working in suicide prevention for 3 years out of my 5 years in mental health. Mental health professionals say that it is not good to use terms like commit suicide. Whenever I first started in suicide prevention, I wasn't entirely for sure why. Because in I grew up in Oklahoma. That's just what everybody said was commit suicide. Well, commit is a word that has certain stigmas associated with it. Like, for example, you commit adultery, or you commit a crime, or even you're committed to an asylum. So it's
Right.
a horrible act to commit something. So we tend to use terms like died by suicide. Or it can be things such as in University of Mexico, respecting pronouns, respecting their pronoun choices, or respecting their religious beliefs, or especially for me. And we actually, whenever we were talking on the phone, I don't know if you remember this, but you had talked about the younger kids being under 25. Well, I had just turned 20 the day before, so I missed the cutoff. What I would say is a real big key to our outreach is letting our student employees and our student interns be the face of our outreach. So anytime that we do tabling, our students are there. Anytime that we do a social media post, our students are helping with that, because they know even that 5-year gap between me and the average college freshman is a huge gap. I don't feel old until I start talking to them, and I realize I don't understand a lot of the things that they say, or that they're the slang terms, or the music that they do. And it's very, very helpful to have students who can say, no, this is an old term, use this instead. Or no, a student might be more interested in hearing about this. So kind of letting students kind of take the lead and be the face of our mental health outreach, because people are much more likely to open up to peers than they are to older adults, at least in this generation.
Boy, don't I know that? I think that's every generation. I got some of my worst advice from my friends, right? In some really big areas too, because that's who I spent my time with. That's who I was trying to impress, fit it in with, and all those things are going on at the same time, especially around the middle school on age group, right? But I like that you mentioned a couple of protected groups there. And I really wonder, so here's a question. I don't know how to answer this or ask this question. Because when I used to work for UNM, I was a CRA over at Student Family Housing back when it was a Student Family Housing, right? And one of the things we did, we took these inclusion classes with the LG, I'll just say LG Plus, because I don't want to mess anything up. So bear with me. I hate to make it sound like a cell phone or carrier or whatever, but so we took these allied courses, and one of the things I found was that some of us who were just flat ignorant, I'll admit it, I was definitely among that company about some of the terms and stuff, right? But I can see that it was affecting our presenters who belong to this community in a negative way, And I was trying my best to just be like, hey, if we're sitting in this, I pulled them to the side. I said, if we're sitting in this class, just understand we're trying. Right? We're not the enemy. We're just idiots. You know what I mean? We're here to learn voluntarily, right? Like no one's cuffing us and making us take these inclusion classes and try to learn the different terms. Like I had no idea what my personal term was, being assigned a gender at birth. And that's one that I go with. And that's one, my pronouns are he, his, him. Right? So all these things that I just had no idea existed, and how many people I was affecting out there. So what do you do to try to keep people feeling included, feeling safe, and but on the other side, like not putting all of their, I guess, mental energy on, I need you to accept me the way I want to be accepted, but move more towards at least tolerate me, I know it's a loaded question. Wait, did you get the question? Because I'm not even sure what I just asked. I'm just talking out loud here. Anybody, somebody save me out there.
That is a loaded question for sure. So, as a cis het straight white guy, right? Grew up in rural Oklahoma. We didn't have a lot of these concepts, or at least weren't aware of them until I started working so for me, it was a sort of gradual exposure to being a little bit more sensitive to people of different walks of life. So my first job, it was opioid abuse prevention, and it was just in the community in Oklahoma. And I did that for about 2 years as general community, mostly white people. And then I started working at the Kickapoo tribe, at the Kickapoo Tribal Health Center. And that was whenever I really started to learn, well, for there it was cultural literacy, understanding why, for example, they didn't celebrate Columbus Day. Why is Christopher Columbus not a sort of renowned figure in the Kickapoo tribe, and kind of learning the history behind that, and learning cultural significance behind colors, why certain colors weren't allowed on our flyers. And there are really two routes that you can go with those sorts of things when being exposed to people of different walks of life. You can become adamant and hardlined and absolutely refuse to tolerate it or judge it or go, this is dumb, this is stupid, I don't understand why you do this, we do that. That would be first of all, you would not get very far in health outreach, because health outreach is something that includes all people of all walks of life, age, gender, sexuality. And second of all, you're not providing a very comfortable environment to do your work or to provide that health outreach. You're stigmatizing a lot of things. And it would be very ignorant of me of the sort of power dynamic at play of just a white guy in a very privileged background going in and just acting ignorant. So being mindful, I think, of respecting other people's differences, and going, this person is different and that's okay. We're not all the same. This is another human being. We all have the same sort of mental health struggles on this planet. We all feel anxiety. We all feel depressed, and treating them with the respect that they deserve as a human being. And it just understanding that it is a learning process. So like I said before with suicide is the term commit suicide. I still slip up even in suicide prevention presentations. And I say suicide, but I say, I apologize. This is just an old habit. I'm still actively learning and actively learning. And it is nice to have, like I said before, the student employees and our student interns are really the face of our outreach, to have those students that can call us out and say, hey, that term is a bit out of date, or that phrase is a bit out of date. This is what you say instead, and you apologize, and you actively work to be better. Do you have thoughts about that, Joseph?
Well, what I am going to say is, specifically me and Trey working in the sector of public health, for us, it's about getting in the community and, asking the questions, what is it that you're struggling with? Where do we need to help, especially as far as mental health goes? What do you see? What are you struggling with? And we were going to want to talk to people from all walks of life, especially, people, LGBTQ plus people, people of color, Hispanic people, Indigenous peoples. We want to talk to everyone, and we want to address what your issues are, because at the end of the day, our job is to help you. We want to help you. So I think that's really just a way that we can kind of reduce a lot of stigma and things like that, and help educate the whole community, is just by talking to each other and asking, what is the issue? What really is the issue?
No, that's brilliant. Like, I'm over here smiling like a proud father over here. Is like, man, he's so confident. So confident. So, okay. One thing I allow my kids to do is to call me out. Right? It drives my wife nuts. It's like, man, just set the bar. Like, say what you want done. If they do great, we'll celebrate. If not, we'll gently correct. Right? All of this, like, I have these like little town meetings, right? Town hall style meetings with our family. We're a family of 6, and we're a blended family. So it's a lot of different pieces moving around. With all those different groups, do you ever find yourself like, hey, the thing that this group is saying will absolutely help them mentally is something that's going to be harmful to another group?
So that's a tough question for sure. What I will say is you need to have, with different groups, you need to have that sort of cultural competency, that mindset of, so whenever I worked at the Kickapoo tribe in McLeod, cultural competency or cultural connection was the cornerstone of our outreach. I was under a grant that was suicide and substance abuse prevention. And we knew through research that members, Native Americans, members of tribes, were much less likely to have thoughts of suicide or to abuse substances or to be at risk of diabetes or any of the other afflictions if they felt more connected to their community and to. Now, what that meant is every outreach event and every activity we did had a culturally competent mindset. So I'm a white guy, right? I cannot set up an event to teach tribal members about their culture. First of all, nobody would listen to me. And second of all, I would have no clue what I'm talking about. I don't know their culture. I don't. So what that would look like is we would get members of the community to go and sort of take the lead on these events. They would do, say, painting on cedar rounds or doing, I remember this one time we had actually a chef who had a Native American themed restaurant that every meal was in season. The menu was changing constantly and it was all Native American foods. We had her come down and she actually did a cooking demonstration. We arranged the event, we set the venue, everything, we bought the supplies, but she led the event. She talked about culture. So it really is it does look different for different communities. And I do think that is something that going into the future, that does need to be looked at a little bit more seriously. I had actually, a couple of days ago, attended a webinar where they were talking about recent suicide statistics in the United States. And I apologize, I keep bringing up suicide. It's just I've been working in it for 3 years. So I apologize if this is kind of a heavy topic.
No problem, no problem.
Okay. But if you look nationally, the recorded rates of suicide are lowering. But the suicide rate for marginalized communities, so African Americans, Native Americans, are actually increasing. It is actually white Americans where the rate is decreasing. So then you have to look at what factors are at play that is causing this disparity. And the treatment is not a one size fits all. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, sure, for sure. It's like any sort of I guess negotiation, right? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, like any negotiation, you kind of want to all walk away happy or all walk away a little bit perturbed or something in between, right? As long as it's whatever's happening is like a mathematical or science equation. Whatever's happening on one side needs to be happening on the other as well, to try to achieve some sort of maybe not equal. I always mess this up. Like you want equability versus equality, right? I mean, it'd be nice to have equality, but the fact of the matter is we're equal in being, not in function, right? There exists in just about every genre of life, every corner of life, some sort of hierarchy that we, sometimes it's maliciously done, sometimes it's an organic sort of setting, You'll have people in conversations where we kind of look to like, all right, what you gonna say next? Like steer the conversation, But as long as we're, I think, trying to, tolerate and build to some sort of real relationship, I think it usually works out, right? I mean, you guys see the same thing. Like you open up a little bit, and at least try to, get along and understand where the other person is coming from. Like I feel like you just usually it works out well.
Definitely. I think taking that first initiative, taking that first step, just in itself shows a lot.
Absolutely. So what, in your personal experience, Joseph, where someone took that initiative. If you don't mind sharing a personal story, someone that took initiative and was, approached you and maybe asked you a question or led you to some sort of, possible solution to any one given problem.
Of course. Well, um, as working at Shack, we do have different programs in which we try to promote wellness and different things like that. So we do have a program called the Bare Necessities Program, which is where we supply condoms throughout campus. We have 27 different locations across campus. I refill them weekly. It's one of my jobs. Um, but I have had lots of students, I get kind of recognized a lot when I'm doing the condom run, as we like to call it, on like a little condom ferry. I get recognized a lot. People are always coming and asking me, hey, if I could give them like extra condoms. Um, but in situations like that, I just, like, hey, if you come down to our office, you can get whatever condoms that you'd like. And so sometimes taking that first step and being like, hey, here's some additional information as far as what we can offer, taking that first step to, try and help their confusion just makes a world of a difference.
That is scary. So there was when I was at UNM, there was this like drive for, hey, everybody, bring somebody and come get tested for AIDS. Like they were just so like nonchalant. Like, I mean, I was like, all right. Now at the time, I've been married for quite some time, right? So I had no real fear of it, but something about sitting in there and waiting your turn and then waiting for the results. I thought, oh my God, like what if it's been late for like 12 years and I actually like I just went through a litany of emotions, and then as soon as I get the test, I was like, whew. And my wife was like, were you actually worried? I was like, it's something about sitting in that like office and just waiting. Oh my goodness, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine like, maybe having unprotected sex and then it's just being like, oh, I better go get tested for I don't even know what. How do you get people to get over their fears to just, hey man, get the information, good, bad, or ugly. The sooner you have the information, if there is a problem, you can start to work on it, start to treat it. Just like he said about mental health. How do you get people to, emboldened enough to do that?
Well, I think a big thing that we try to do is, I think there's kind of this culture that, talking about your health, things like sex, different things like that. It's kind of like it's kind of a scary topic for a lot of people. A lot of people don't like to talk
Parents.
about that. Yeah, parents especially. A lot of people don't like to talk about that. And for a lot of people, it actually scares them to think about that. And a lot of people are definitely uneducated as far as their health goes. And so something that we can do to kind of help ease people's mind is we definitely want to help and educate our population as much as possible. We want to make sure that people know what is going on in their body. We want people to know what is actually, when they're going to the doctor's office, we want people to understand what the doctor is telling them. So that's a big thing that we try to do is just educate people as far as your health goes, your mental health, your physical health, sexual health. All of those things are extremely important to know as a human, because you need to know, how a certain thing is going to affect your health.
I love it. So the political aspect of things. If you had, President Biden sitting here instead of me, what's one thing, I guess, each of you that you would want them to be working on or advocating for?
I think for me, it would be probably, I'd like to see comprehensible sexual education across all schools in the United States. I think sex education is something that is extremely lacking and it varies state from state. And I think that as far as a country, we should have one solid curriculum for sex education, and even in addition to that, we can tailor it to fit the certain demographics of our students, to tailor certain things that this population might face versus this population. But I definitely
Right.
think that the idea of let's just not talk about it, that's as we see in data, that just doesn't necessarily work.
Right. And look, Trey and I, as old guys, like We know practically, right? We've been around people, right? It's not like, well, I mean, no one talked to us about it, so I guess we'll just practice abstinence. Like,
Mhm.
no, like we're exploring beings. It's one of those things that, like, if you don't give us something positive to aim at, something, or like whether it be a corporation or a person who's out for themselves, that can aim you towards anything they want you to. So, and I love the idea of like baseline. As soon as you said one comprehensive, sort of educational baseline, at first I was thinking like, but all these different people. And then you said, and from there we can tailor. It's almost like we were in sync there, Joseph. That's good
Mhm.
stuff. That's good stuff. You talked a lot, Mr. Holland, about what is it? The opioid crisis. I'm gonna ask you that same question about if President Biden were sitting here instead of me, what would you hope he advocate for? If it's not opioid, you tell me what, and then we'll swing back to that.
So I do want to be clear that anything that I say in regards to this question is going to be my personal viewpoint and not any official UNM standpoint. I do want to say that I would love to see a lot more funding put into preventative public health care. Um, there is only so much that we can do with treatment. I think preventative, one of the things I like to joke about working in preventative mental health is I talk with counselors a lot, and counselors have a great, sometimes very dark sense of humor, but they have great senses of humor. And one of the jokes I like to tell them all the time is my job is to put you out of a job, right? One of my jobs is to sort of help address these issues at the root. And an old mentor of mine once said that we are not in, sometimes it doesn't feel like we're in the prevention business, it feels like we're in the reaction business. Because kind of a cycle that happens, especially with grants. I was under a grant funded institution that was funded federally under grants, is a problem will arise, be it opioids or be it suicide or whatever it may be in a community. Eventually, it gets bad enough that the state or federal level notices, and they put funding into grants for local nonprofits or prevention institutions. They start implementing programs. The problem starts to go down, and then the funding dries up. It goes away. They stop funding it. Well, then what happens after those prevention programs go away? The problem rises back up, and then it kind of goes in this cycle. I would love to see a lot more information and a lot more awareness brought to preventative health, and kind of encouraging students or anybody really that mental health or just like physical health, physical health is not just something that you work on in the hospital. Mental health is not just something that you work on sitting in front of a counselor. It's very important to take active steps to taking care of and being mindful of your mental health, and kind of increasing that literacy among students, especially. I think the earlier we can start to talk about these things, the better.
How early are we talking?
Uh,
I'll tell you a quick story. I was looked at like a madman. As soon as my first son was born, I like opened his little hand. I put the bottle in his hand. I was like, all right, let's learn how to do this, because I'm not going to do this forever. They were like, oh, come on, Dad, he was just born. I was like, no, I'm going to expose him. If he can't handle it, I'll help him until he can. But let's go ahead and start exposing him to this. So,
Yeah.
like, how early are we talking?
I mean, I'm not an expert, and I would leave an official answer like that to experts. But in my personal opinion, as soon as they start feeling emotions, it's never too late to start trying to work to making them understand those emotions.
Well, it's weird how the human brain works. I think somewhere I'm gonna butcher this. I'm without my podcaster producer, so she is the one who makes me look smart. For everybody out there who thinks I'm smart, there you go. But I believe it's somewhere within the first 6 months that every single neurological connection that you're ever gonna have is done in that small time period. And after that, it's just about nurturing whatever the pathways were built. Like, so they talk about, mothers, soothing and singing and, talking to your child like like a regular person instead of the baby language. So do you think it would be wasted to just kind of like, hey, let's breathe, let's do some breathing exercises, whether the baby can understand or not? Like, maybe that calms you down and the energy is transferred. Like, what are your thoughts? What do you think, Joseph?
For sure. I definitely think that we need to start normalizing emotions, feeling emotions. And I want to go back to my point is we need to start educating people as far as their health goes, but specifically their mental health. We need to start educating people on, this may be a label for what you're feeling. It may not. It could be. This could be another label for what you're feeling. But I definitely think that that's a first step is starting to just get out there and educating people.
All right, man. Man, that's good. And you, Trey, working so much with the I like your idea about the preventative stuff. So what is something that we need to know that I guess a lot of people, I don't even know how to ask this question. Let me start with the story. Oh Lord. I'm trying to be Tyrion Lannister here. Sorry. So basically, I had some health issues and I went and tried to get it taken care of, and I had to pay so much before they, kicked in on the copay and all that kind of stuff. So then I kind of was like a dog with a bone. I was like, I need to know every doctor that's in my network, and I'll need to know everything that counts as preventative care and proactive care that I didn't have to pay out of pocket. And buddy, it was quite a lot. Like I didn't know that like I had access to a nutritionist, right? To blood panels, to all kinds of like tests and things that like if we look at you now, we can tell you exactly what you need to do in order to keep yourself healthy or get healthier. So what's one thing that could help a great number of people that they have access to that they don't know they have access to? I guess. Is that a good way to ask it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I love talking about the resources that we have, particularly on campus. I think one of the things that I struggled with starting my job in a rural community is one of our biggest problems was the lack of resources, right? There was simply a lot of stuff that wasn't there that needed to be there. At UNM, it's kind of almost the opposite problem because we have so many different resources for students on campus that it can become almost daunting and it's difficult to navigate. What I will say is for most students at UNM have paid something that is called the shack fee. It is whenever you start at UNM, you're given a big list of fees, and you're kind of at some point you're not really for sure what you're paying, just paying it in order to be a student. And one of those fees, if you're taking 4 or more credit hours, is you're paying the shack fee. That entitles you to a lot of different services at shack that have already just been paid for. So anything preventative, you are entitled to the copay. So if you schedule an appointment with, say, medical or with counseling, the first appointment, which is the triage appointment at this current time, you don't have to pay for. It's just a 30-minute appointment to assess what you need for care. Any appointment after has a $15 copay. This is before insurance, and we do work with several different insurances. That list is constantly changing. We try to include as many as we can, and I would strongly recommend if you're an incoming student and you have an insurance plan from your parents or whatever, please check out the SHAC website and look at the accepted insurances. And it's a $15 copay baseline pay. Now, if you had to receive an additional, so say, for example, you go to the doctor at SHAC and they determine you need an x-ray, that x-ray is going to add on to that $15 copay. So that's just payment stuff. That's stuff that we like to keep we try our hardest to keep the cost low to be as affordable as possible for students. And we are a lot more affordable for students than if they were to go, say, to UNMH or to Presbyterian. But now let's talk about the good stuff, the free stuff, right? There are a lot of mental health options that you don't necessarily have to pay for. For example, whenever I first started going to therapy, I'd mentioned struggling with emotional and mental health issues that led me to drop out of college. And I wanted to receive mental health care, but mental health was such a stigma that I didn't want it showing up on my transaction history on my bank. My bank account was shared with my family at the time, and I just didn't want anybody seeing it. I didn't want to ask questions. there are a lot of counseling centers that will have a sort of counselor in training. I don't remember if they call it a residency, but it is a counseling student who has to get basically their clinic hours as a clinician. And it is done under supervision. So you can choose to be seen by one of those counselors in training, and you will receive qualified mental health care under supervision, and most of the time it's free. That is one of the things that we have at UNM. That's the Manzanita Clinic. The Manzanita Clinic is open for students, and it's open actually for the general community. And it's open during the semester. So during the spring and the fall semester, whenever students are in class, they open it up, and you can go receive counseling from somebody in training who is under supervision from a licensed counselor. The sort of trade-off with that is they are recorded sessions. They're recorded for feedback purposes. They're deleted at the end of every semester, and I can't exactly say who sees the recording, who doesn't, but they're kept in-house, and it's just for feedback. I believe the psychology department has a similar clinic, the psychology department clinic. And then you also can attend any of Health Promotion's outreach events. So you have access to our activities and our events that we do on campus all throughout the year. I do every other Monday, I do an event called Mindfulness Monday, where a student can come down to Health Promotion office, and we talk about what mindfulness is, how to practice mindfulness and its benefits on mental health. We are also doing these, next semester, we're going to be doing these mental health workshops, which is just a free workshop where students can attend, and we'll talk about a mental health topic. So one of the ones that we're doing right towards the beginning of the semester is adjusting to college life. This is for incoming freshmen, first generation students, international students who have just gone into campus, and they aren't really for sure how to adjust to living in college with this new freedom, with these new responsibilities. And we're going to talk about strategies and coping skills in order to manage that. And if a student wants to talk about any general mental health information or physical health information, they can come to Health Promotion and have a one-on-one consultation with one of us. Now, to be clear, I am not a licensed counselor. I cannot provide counseling care or diagnoses. But if they're thinking, I have finals coming up and I just need some help with like stress management techniques,
Right.
they can sit down in my office across from me, and we'll talk about breathing techniques, or we'll talk about studying techniques, ways that they can keep themselves mentally fit and healthy during a very stressful time. So there are a lot of opportunities, and I would strongly recommend not only doing some research, but if you have questions, if you're a student, come down to Health Promotion and ask. We'd love to show you around and tell you about all the resources that we have available for you.
All right. See, look, Joseph knew I was coming at him. But man, so okay, I love all those, and that's available to every single student, right?
Yes. So SHAC is available to students. Manzanita and the psychology department clinic are open to students and the general community. I do also, and I apologize, I forgot about another resource I wanted to bring up. We another resource that is called the Agora Crisis Center. So sometimes you might feel like you're overwhelmed, that you're struggling, and you just need somebody to talk to. You need someone to talk to. You can call Agora Crisis Center. You don't have to be a student. You can be any member of the community, and you'll be connected anonymously to a trained crisis call person, and just talk with them about how you're feeling. And they'll listen to you. They'll provide emotional support, and they will connect you with resources that you need. And it doesn't have to be, say suicidality. It can be anything that you deem a crisis. It can be bullying. It can be, I'm just really, really stressed, or I can't sleep, or I'm just really lonely right now. And you can call them. It is as many crisis counselors are available. So if they're all booked up, then you can leave a message and then they will call you back. But that is another great resource available.
Man, that's incredible. And I love how you make the point, make sure that people understand that everybody has their own definition for what a crisis is, right? And I know you probably have the talent and skill set that you have to be able to look at anybody's whatever they feel like they're stressed out about is to say, first and foremost, most likely, don't panic, plan, right? If you think the spider on the wall is the like biggest trauma that you're ever going to face in your life, or if you're dealing with, some issues that are deemed by society as more serious, like suicide and things of that nature, like the ideal is to get around someone who can help.
Mhm.
You can't get to a professional right away. Come into some of your workshops, which is crazy. I did one of those workshops, I believe, with Dr. MacGyver. I keep wanting to call her MacGyver, like, the guy who's like, give me a toothpick, a hairpin or whatever, and I'll make a nuclear bomb. But like, yeah, Dr. MacGyver. It was cool. I met one of my, people I still keep in contact today. Like, we were sitting in a group session, and I had this thing to where I felt my mind was just like constantly going. Like, I'd wake up and I'd be like, I have 40 things that I'm worried about as soon as I wake up, and I just go to sleep from sheer like just being tired of thinking about, being anxious all day long. And he, on the other hand, his problem was it's like my mind's just blank. There's nothing. And I remember, and look, I'm not ashamed to say this, but I started bawling like a baby because I just, for half a second, was like, oh, what it would be like to have a blank mind. He was just like, want to have ideas and want to do all these stuff. Like, we were just kind of like, each other, and like, so, I mean, you can really get a lot out of these workshops and, the outreach stuff. And like, yeah, it's pretty cool, man. So, man, thank you so much for your time. Before I let you go, of course, we want you to shout out the show is the What the Frap podcast. But first, I can't let you go without playing our little game, okay?
Okay.
I went to Vanderbilt University. We had a coach, no cursing policy. So we kind of smashed together the F word and crap so we can still kind of vent without having to run after practice, right? So I'm going to play a game with you. It's called Frap Yeah or Frap No. You ready?
Okay.
All right. Red chili is better than green chili. Frap Yeah or Frap No?
FRAP, yeah.
Frap Yeah. I like it. DC is better than Marvel.
Ooh. FRAP,
Careful.
yeah, with a huge asterisk.
Ooh, what's the asterisk?
Man, I love DC superheroes, but Marvel is just annihilating them on movies.
Yeah, that's true. Hang in there, Joseph.
Yeah.
We're playing Frap Yeah, Frap No. I'm going to have you catch up. You ready?
Okay.
All right. The backstory is Frap is just a word. There's the F word and crap smashed together. It came from my days at Vanderbilt University. All right. So we're saying Frap Yeah or Frap No. Red chili is better than green chili. Frap Yeah, Frap No.
FRAP no.
Frap No. Oh, I like this. DC. DC is better than Marvel. Frap Yeah, Frap No.
Ooh. I'm gonna go with FRAP no as well.
Oh, I like it. All right, so we'll start with Mr. Holland first. Cake is better than pie. Frap Yeah, Frap No.
FRAP, yeah.
Same question, Joseph.
FRAP yeah.
Hey, we're cake guys. Okay. Anime, the best thing since sliced bread. Frap Yeah, Frap No. We'll start with Joseph first.
I'm gonna go with FRAP no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not gonna say anything. Mr. Holland. Oh, that hurt.
Man, I'm going to say, I think I eat sandwiches more than I watch anime, so I'm going to say FRAP no. But I
All
love
right.
it.
All right. Look, is J-ZILLA depressed now? Frap Yeah. Okay, no. Finally, it's the What the Frap podcast, the best podcast this side of Mississippi.
FRAP, yeah.
FRAP yeah. Mhm.
Hey, thank you so much for that trick. Y'all just went right along with it. I appreciate it. Last thing before I let you out, we'll start with Mr. Joseph. I don't know if I really got that question out to you. Like, what's one thing that you took advantage of in your freshman year or even now that you didn't even know was an option as far as Shaq or any of the other resources?
Okay, for sure. Well, I think a lot of students don't know that Shaq does in fact have a pharmacy, which is something that I found useful, especially living on campus. Um, As far as other resources go, I definitely found like the CAPS, the tutoring center. It's pretty good as far as like if you need tutoring or help on something. A lot of students don't know that that's just there for their disposal. So there are two ones that I think are very good. But I would say most of the services at Shack you're gonna want to really pay attention to, because those are gonna be extremely useful.
Absolutely. And before I let you get out of here, just give a good old shout out to, man, be sure to watch the What the FRAP podcast with J-ZILLA. Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can. Was I supposed to say that?
Oh, yeah. Just like be sure to watch the What the FRAP
what?
podcast with J. Yeah, we're doing a promotional shoot
Okay.
now.
All right.
I know, very sloppily. Go ahead.
Sorry.
You're okay.
Don't forget to watch the What the FRAP podcast with J-ZILLA.
Hey, appreciate that. We'll set them off to the side. For you, sir, thank you for everything that you do over there. Like having people, as a parent who's gonna have a UNM student, it can be a little scary. As young Joseph there with that great hair and that beautiful setup back there, talking about passing out condoms and talking to my daughter about very important things. But as scary as it is, I understand like how important it is, honestly, to get that information out of there, because knowledge is power, and it's gonna help them have a better college experience, and that's what every parent want. We just don't want to hear about it. We don't want to know about it, right? But yeah, so man, just give the last shout outs or anything you want to promote, and thank you again for your time.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I did want to ask, is J-ZILLA a J-Dilla reference?
You know what? We are beefing. I'm glad you said that. Okay, we're not actually beefing. But yeah, like I love J Dilla's music, man. And I had no idea that the names were similar. There's a Zilla out there. There's a Jay Zilla. So we're all kind of like watching each other like, what's this kid about? But my name came from, like I said, I'm an old man. I don't rap or anything. I'm not that interesting. But when I moved to New Mexico and got married, my wife had 2 children ahead of time. And she told them that I was a little person. And so they were waiting to meet this like 3 foot, nothing guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like 6'4", 300 plus pounds, right? I played college ball at Vanderbilt with like Jay Cutler and, Justin Geisinger and Theo Horrocks and all those guys, right? And so like literally, they see me and they were just like, wait, what? What's going on? Right? They were very little. So after a quick chat and sharing a bag of hot Cheetos, which I now know that I should never partake in again, right? I'm gonna leave that to the kids. What ended up happening is they didn't know what to call me, so I was like, just make up a name. And so it started with Jeremy Godzilla, and over the time it kind of withered down to J-ZILLA. So that's the name. I know.
Okay.
Yeah, J Dilla's music is awesome. Go check him out. Even though I'm like, man, who had the name first? But anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I was just curious about that the whole podcast, and I wanted to ask before you let me.
I'm glad you did.
But yeah, I just want to shout out the Shack services for UNM. If you are an incoming student at UNM, I strongly recommend going to Shack, especially the health promotion department, talking with us, talking about the services that we provide, and really taking an active interest in the resources that you have available to you. You can just go to college and take your classes and get out with a degree, and that's perfectly fine. But if you want to get more involved in the things that we have going on campus and the information and the resources that we have available on campus, I strongly, strongly recommend that you do some looking into it. And please come see us. We're very friendly. Most of us don't bite. So I hope to see you then.
I love that, man. Don't forget to shout out. Hey, be sure to watch the What the FRAP podcast with J-ZILLA.
Be sure to watch the What the FRAP podcast with J-ZILLA.
Hey, appreciate that. We'll sit them on over there. Man, I hope you all enjoyed that conversation. Like, man, even the parts where I feel a little bit privileged. I know that's weird to say as a black guy in America, right? What I was having this discussion, a very dangerous discussion, right? We were having the Bill Cosby talk, and I was trying to probably poorly use that whole deal as a bad example of what my privilege looks like. And I said, if Bill Cosby offers me a strange pill and a drink, like, I'm going to decline. And if he has something to say about it, I may have to fight Bill Cosby, but that's coming from a male, like a giant male privilege side of things. And so we were trying to figure out what in society makes people think the way they do. Why do they feel the need to feel pressure to do things that are counter to their personal behavior? There's a large amount of people, I think it's somewhere around 90% of people who get prescribed medications don't take them properly. They keep them too long. They stop them short. They cut them in half to try to save money and take them that way. They just don't even fill the prescription. It's a myriad of different ways that we don't take care of ourselves because of these misconceptions. Go check out Shaq if you're on campus. If you're on some other campus, find out what the equivalent to Shaq is. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And shoot, man, that's about it. I appreciate this show. Thank you all. Thanks to my guests, Trey Holland and Joseph Barrows over there at UNL, man. I'll be bugging them pretty soon on campus. Got a couple of projects going on over there. But, yep, this has been the What the FRAP podcast with J-ZILLA. Join us Monday. Peace.
This morning, a violent weather outbreak bringing tornadoes to Florida's Atlantic coast.
Now to that urgent and massive manhunt after that deadly mass shooting near Houston. The youngest victim, just 8 years old. Police say the suspect. International High School of New Orleans is making quite an impression on the college admission.
Dennis Barnes has gone into 125 colleges and universities. He's also earned millions in scholarships. That's how he did it.